Because at the end of the day, we make so many excuses for ourselves because we're afraid of change, even if we know that the change will ultimately make us happier. Hello, you guys, and welcome back to another episode of the This Is Called Healing podcast, where, of course, we gather to talk about spirituality, self-development, growth, and self-love, and all things healing, of course. I am back on my little pillow because I'm kind of liking the vibe of when it's a deeper, more casual talk on the podcast instead of a video, to just make it a little bit more like a chat between you and me. Although I am thinking about getting like an actual chair for this because this was really good the first time, but I'm realizing like the longer I sit like this, I'm kind of needing a little bit of like back support. But anyways, I hope that you have a snack and that you're ready to talk all things having a bad day and turning them good, because I've kind of been having some of my own, but I also feel like I've lived enough life to understand that there's always a way to make it better. There's always a way to turn it around. There's always a meaning to things happening. And whenever it seems like things keep happening to you, in my opinion, it's the universe that's trying to connect with you, trying to have you connect to yourself. So I have some sparkling water ready, and I have some of these corn chips with like a protein spread and almond butter, and I have one piece of this dried mango. I have become addicted to mango lately. Fresh mango, always loved it, never tried dried, but this one is just, it's too good. And unfortunately, mangoes are pretty high in calories, so like if I wanted to, I could seriously eat like 5 bags of them just in one go. But that would be like 2 days worth of calories, so yeah. Let's move on. So these are the topics that we will be going through today, and they are the following: doing the thing, emotional regulation and detachment, gratitude, and the 3 principles. Astrologically, it's the new year, it's Aries season, which essentially means it's all about yourself, the you, the self, right? It's all about doing things for you. And also, I'm personally a Pisces. I'm sorry if you don't like astrology, we'll move on, but this is a pretty spiritual podcast, so hopefully you like it. It's all about the self and all about action, all about doing things. And also that kick of the true new year, starting a new cycle, really adds a lot of energy. And I don't know about you, but because I'm a Pisces and I'm so used to the emotional and the inner world and flowing in that, I don't know, but like my first 3 months were shit. And now, and I don't mean the shit, I mean they were shit. And now I kind of feel like April has been my best month so far. And it all comes down to me waiting so long to like finally take action. And I kind of feel like all of the crap I went through the first months, maybe other people in my life are starting to experience. But I think it's because, in all honesty, I did a lot more of the inner work during those other months, which has also shown me that maybe I actually want to start designing my years differently, which we're going to get into doing 12-week years in another video, because I'm currently learning about that. And I really think it's important to start thinking about what season are you in your personal life, because at the end of the day, time is subjective, and it's really important to keep in mind that we all, just like when a woman has a cycle, we all flow and ease differently. And even throughout a day, we can go through so many different feelings and experiences and thoughts, and things can shift in 1 second. So it's really important to learn how to connect with yourself so that you don't just get shaken up by the world at any given moment. And it's important to not give so much credence to, it's the new year, so it needs to be the new best me, when really it's so funny, especially where I live, where it's so cold. I don't remember a time where we had a worse last year of just really bad weather. Like I feel like it's been winter for forever. So your girl is excited for summer. Essentially, when it's been so dark and it's been so gloomy, honestly, you start to feel just more depressed and just heavy in your body. And so it's just more natural for when this time comes around to start gaining momentum. And I feel like that's what's kind of happening in the world. Now, we also have eclipses and we have Mercury retrograde and a lot of other things that more like the smarter astrologers than myself. I'm not an astrologer, by the way. But all I know is it's supposed to be kind of like a chaotic, heavy month in a way. A lot of action, but also don't get surprised in general. And if you look back on April so far, if it's felt messy and if it's felt chaotic, and especially if the eclipses and that time brought up a lot for you. Because to me, it sure did. And that's why I felt like that just had to be the subject of this podcast. I walked into my job the other day and I was just like, seriously, I need better coping mechanisms and tools to like help me shift back into a great day. Because if I've had a good, solid, productive morning at home, and then when I get into work, it's a part-time job because I'm a student assistant. So when I get into work and I have that chunk, I don't want to feel miserable. I don't want to feel angry. I don't want to feel like that's a part of my, like I want to be able to have control over my emotions. And I think even that awareness is a lot of progress on that road, because a lot of us just seem to get triggered and react. And I think for me, I'm personally very sensitive to energy and to people. And so which I am a lot of the days, I'm literally going from the metro, a crowded metro, to the S train, to the normal train in central Copenhagen, where there's a lot of people and a lot of people rushing. It's a lot of people to and from work and whatnot. And a lot of people are just very much in their own fields and in their own stress and rushing. And I am too in a lot of ways. But that just means that you're in this chaotic energy right before leaving, right before getting to your next place. And it's very understandable how it can be so easy to just lament in that energy and for you to take that on. And then you carry it with you onto the day. So a morning routine is amazing, but you gotta have tools throughout the day, because I really the other day had a great morning and I was so productive and I did the things I was supposed to. But then I get to work and I'm just like, great, there was chaos again. And this person did this person looked at me weird, said this, whatever it is. And I think because I do so much of my inner work, it can also be a little bit of a block sometimes, because I start to overthink, like, what does that mean for me? What bad karma am I getting now? What did I do? What do I need to learn? When maybe this is just part of being human, like the everyday stuff you are in a crowded place, like you're gonna have to deal with this to and from these places. So essentially, you can't just stay all day in your own little bubble feeling amazing. You're gonna have to learn how to control yourself out there, right? Because a lot of the people aren't going to, so we gotta be able to not always take it on as our own feelings. So numero uno, will be just doing the thing. Now, please let me explain what I mean. I added this one on last minute because I was kind of talking to myself in my own head, because I was just doing a little bit of vlogging. And I started talking about this randomly because I just had this interview for an internship. And I was talking about me showing you guys what it looks like when I'm simply taking on things and saying yes instead of overthinking. When I'm saying yes to opportunities that I'm not sure of, but I want to see where it goes, instead of just limiting myself and thinking, this is why I shouldn't, or I can't, or that I don't know enough. Well, is it in some sort of realm something that could be a good opportunity for you? Let's find out. So instead of being like, I have no time to prepare, I get nervous, this, that, and the other, it's just more important to show up. And I did, and it went so good. So that is me simply doing the thing. Now, what got me to thinking about that was, I'm currently doing, which if you've watched my channel or my podcast, I'm sorry that I've repeated this so many times, but I'm on like day 25-ish of 75 Hard, which is an amazing challenge that I have completed before successfully. Thank you very much. The one thing that you really learn as a great lesson on this challenge is mindset and victim mentality. You cannot simply choose to just say, I'm going to stay stuck in this victim mentality. I have a bad feeling. Someone said something bad to me. I got rocked by something, or it feels like it because I got triggered. I don't feel well today, so I'm not going to do the thing. that cannot be an excuse, because what you're doing is you're creating a pattern. Your brain is telling you this doesn't feel good, this doesn't feel safe, this is unknown. And again, your brain, number one, as we always say, is trying to keep you safe at all times. But your brain doesn't know how to logically tell you. You have to tell it and your safety mechanisms that this is not something that will kill me. This just feels uncomfortable. And that can obviously apply to many things. But being able to cope throughout the day, especially if you're trying to change your life, if you're trying to feel better overall, if you want a happier, more fulfilling life, you're going to have to learn how to deal with it in the moment. And that's coming from someone who has backed out of so many situations in life and who has shamed herself and just felt not good enough, not worthy, and especially not pretty enough to simply do a lot of things. And so I will try something, but only like half-assing it. I will definitely undershoot my shot. I will never be all in. And then I'll go home and shame myself for it not going well or for not being picked. And then I'll definitely tell myself, oh, why are you so ugly? And then I'll try to become prettier and I'll fail because I'm not really trying. And especially because it's not coming from within, right? So that glow in the glow up is never going to come if I never learn how to love and accept myself enough to do the right kind of work. Right? Like I used to have an eating disorder when I was younger. Actually, I had like both sides of the coin. I used to not really eat as a teenager. And then as a little bit of an older teenager, I started overeating until I weighed about 60 pounds more than I do now. I have completely switched my body and my fitness and my mentality and my identity essentially. But when you make changes like that, because essentially when you're overeating, what you're trying to do, or undereating, you're trying to control the uncontrollable. Your brain, once again, is trying to keep you safe and you want to control. And you feel out of control. So the way that you think you're going to gain it back is by controlling whatever you think you can. And that is giving you some sort of hit of what you need. When I was a very young teenager, not eating because I wasn't happy in my house and it felt chaotic and toxic, it gave me some sense of control of, you're not going to tell me what I can or can't do, so I'm not going to come down and eat. No. And combined with being a young teenager, I loved the feeling of being very thin. And so that a couple years later turned into feeling very sad and depressed even for a while. And that just turned into the awful habit of emotionally eating. And again, it's giving me a sense of dopamine. It's giving me it's like a comfort blanket. It's kind of what wine has also a little bit become to me, which on 75 Hard, you gain so much perspective on alcohol and eating healthy because you can't drink alcohol. But I've almost always had some sense of coping in a bad way, which again, we're all human. But we need to really reflect on the fact that we're trying to control our lives. So if you're getting triggered out in the world, once again, it's the unknown, it's the quote unquote unsafe, and your brain wants to keep you safe by triggering you. So it's going to regulate you in the way that you're used to, in the not good way. Because you've seen so many times, this is chaotic, this is overwhelming, this place is negative. So it's a loop, it's a pattern that your brain keeps telling you, which obviously isn't the greatest thing, right? So can you see how all of this always comes down to your intentions, your decisions, and your ability to control yourself? And being able to control yourself by not over-attaching to the thought of being in control. Did that make sense at all? It's like, if you allow things to happen, and if you make the decision, I don't know what happens in this very moment. I can't control that. I can control my reactions to things. I don't have to attach to every little single thing that happens. I don't need to cope in set negative way to be able to feel a certain way, because it doesn't ever give me control. When I look back, has it ever given me the life that I wanted? No. It gives me a quick high, just like scrolling does to us now. And then it's the ultimate downer, which then just becomes one humongous awful habit of being the same person who's becoming someone they really don't want to be, who hates their lives. Holy moly, that was a long rant. Circling back to doing 75 hard is doing the thing. which can be doing whatever you need to do. But the one thing that it teaches you is I can have a bad day, I can have a bad moment, but it's not going to stop me from showing up. And I think it's also, I love when Jordan Peterson talked about people who have been through things, which, I mean, haven't we all been through things? Don't we all have a sense of trauma? But the person who decides that even though people have done X, Y, Z to me, I won't take that to become me. I will continue to be a kind and generous person despite all of those things. So please keep in mind, I can have a bad day, but wouldn't it be better if I had a bad moment or a bad experience and I decided that I can still have a good day? Or I can have a bad day where I still won the day because I did the thing. Why did I do the thing? Why did I get done what I needed to get done still? Why did I decide that I could? Because that's what I can control. That's what's up to me. And that doesn't mean that you should turn it into, I need to be as productive as possible. That's not what I mean. I don't mean just do more and more and more, because that can also be fake busy or running away, right? But just reflect on how many times have you let one tiny thing that someone said or something that happened or a negative emotion came over you. How many times have you let that become the ruler of your day? How many times has it spiraled? Because I really believe also we tend to have full-on bad days because we allow it, because we don't shift it. And that spiral happens because you just took on an energy and you became that energy for the day. So the universe is now reflecting to you and through you that energy. I will also find the statistic or the quote, but I'm pretty sure I read somewhere at some point that a negative emotion is so much stronger than a positive one. And if that's not true, then I'll probably just cut this out. But alrighty, Rue. Number 2, regulate and detach. In all honesty, I'm just going to keep this as number 2, but because my podcasts are longer and I ramble, they're not as to the point or in point. So honestly, I feel like I already kind of talked about regulating and detaching, but let's also talk about some specific examples, because I'm now going to circle back to your ability to detach from control and detach from being so triggered and also identifying with every single thing that happens to you, or again, the outcome. That is going to be a superpower for you as a tool throughout the day. And that is the one thing that unfortunately does not come without you doing the other things and without you practicing it, without being triggered and being out in the world and then utilizing it. Now, very helpful tools that I personally use: EFT, breathwork, meditation. These are things that definitely use them throughout the day, but making them a part of your rituals and your routines at home are game changers. And it's something that I'm still learning to do consistently, because it's so easy to just do things that are on the list and that are a priority, but you really need, if you want to feel better, you're going to have to make yourself a priority as always number 1, because what else is the point? What is the point of the work if you're not taking care of yourself? So EFT is emotional freedom technique, and it's essentially where you are tapping on certain, is it called meridian points? And there are teachers for this, and there are so many videos on YouTube that are so good. I will link a couple of them, but Brad Yates is definitely one of my OG favorites. But these teachers do it in very different ways from one another. Some like to just get right into the problem. Some like to first talk about the problem and then what's going to come in now. Then some of them just do positive affirmations, which also having affirmations ready to tell yourself out in the world as shit is going down or as you're starting to get triggered or feeling bad are really good to have. And affirmations can sound so simple and so basic in a way, but until you really try it for a while and you really start to notice how you're actually talking to yourself on a regular basis without knowing it or without realizing it, you're going to be so unconscious about these things. So when you're doing positive affirmations, you start to really change that narrative and that talk that you have with yourself. And again, like, what is your most important relationship? The one you have with yourself, right? So that is EFT, which is probably my favorite. The second great thing is breathwork. There is something kind of like a runner's high, and when you do, like this morning I did a really hard HIIT workout. If you know about Shanti and Insanity or Insanity Max 30, love them. They're great for mental health and for when you need a kick in the ass, when you need to feel badass. But when you do a breathwork session, you kind of feel a little high. And that makes sense because you're breathing the way you are. And it can be like quick fire breath, and it can also be very, very calming deep breaths. It can be alternate nostril breathing. So many things for stuff like anxiety, for calming your nervous system, like we're talking about regulation, right? So even doing deep breathing in the situation, taking your thoughts out of the triggered state you're in and shifting it is so helpful. And again, all of these things are so readily available on the internet for free. The one thing that so many people talk about, meditation. You can do a walking meditation, affirmations. You can do it in the morning. You can do it at your job. You can take a 5-minute break, go on a walk, or just literally go to the bathroom, be there for 5 minutes while you're doing some deep breathing and listening to a guided meditation. There are even meditations on YouTube for when you're having a bad day or just quickly getting back to yourself or into your body. And that can just be so helpful. I am finally starting to get a little more serious with the Joe Dispenza meditations because I think the universe keeps sending me people talking about him for a reason. The problem is whenever I've tried doing his stuff, I always end up getting annoyed because his meditations in general are very different. It's not really supposed to be super calming. And so if I'm trying to like get into my body and kind of like trying to connect, I'm very used to it having to be, or it's supposed to be relaxing. So if someone's almost yelling at me in this weird monotone sort of voice, I start to get freaked out and then I start to get annoyed. And I can't explain to you why I get annoyed. It must be some sort of inner resistance. But so many people have talked about him and his meditations that I need to start doing them. And I saw a girl on YouTube or on TikTok who talked about, she actually uses one of his morning meditations as an alarm. How brilliant is that? Right now, I swear to God, I have like one of those lights or lamps where it kind of is a sunrise along with some nature sounds, which is also great. But then if I don't wake up to that calming sound, then 10 minutes later, I have like this really, really crazy alarm where it's essentially just a guy, which is like an audio from TikTok, who's just yelling at you essentially. He's like, "Get up, you stupid fuck." That's essentially my alarm, I swear to God. And it was throughout all of my last 75 hard where I was getting up at 5 a.m. But this time around, I'm a little bit more about also being in my feminine energy. And that I'm also really learning to love about. Loving to learn about. Can you tell I've had a long day? Today has actually been pretty good, but apart from the fact that I had a session with someone after this who's kind of like my spiritual coach, like a spiritual therapist, which is so amazing for me, but it just got moved until tomorrow. And I'm not mad at her or anything, but it just gave me a little bit like I was kind of excited to talk about me and to like talk about, I just love getting things out, like after, like when you finally have someone where you feel like you can talk to like that just feels really freeing. Like when you do a hard workout once again, it's like you get something out and it's like you clear up the clutter and you clear up the space. And so with all of that said, of course, I believe that the session will probably be better tomorrow because that's the way that it's meant to be. So the last thing I want to touch upon with that is somatic work. And it just came to me now, so it's not something I had planned. But somatic work is something that is also, and I trust when things kind of randomly start to pop up in my conscious or in my world around me, I just trust that I'm supposed to either learn about it. Kind of like if you've ever heard of To Be Magnetic, the owner talks about the host or the woman who came up with it, Lacey, talks about the pings that you get where you follow a nudge. So I'm really trying to learn how to be more in tune with my body, which is all about the somatic work, connecting into your feelings and into your body, and really learning how to, if I feel really peeved right now, if I feel annoyed, can I just sit with the feeling and kind of experience, how does this, what I'm feeling right now, how does it feel in my body without judging it, without trying to logically explain it or make it into something that it has to be? How does it make me feel? And to be honest, that can really help a lot Because if you actively say, I don't need to judge this right now, I can actually feel it fully, even if it's a smaller emotion, you start to learn how to connect deeper with yourself. And again, that's kind of what I keep coming back to, because I think deep down, we're so entrenched in these habits and in these loops. And I'm talking from personal experience. And when we're daily getting so disconnected from our personal, authentic truths and connecting with our own bodies and with our own selves and our souls, then it shouldn't be so weird that we're feeling off, or that we're feeling, why can't I be myself? Well, it's because you never practice being yourself. You never step into that self. You never allow it, because you're always running on, I need to do this, this, and this. I need to stimulate something, so let me scroll, let me drink more coffee. Again, guilty of all of it, but I'm really working on it, because I've felt bad long enough. I have waited long enough. Now it's time for me to take ownership and to take control of my life and decide that I'm the one who's in control. Not because of something I'm doing actively, like overeating or doing something that's a bad habit, but because I can control my reactions and I can control my actions. So if I know that I authentically want to steer the ship over here, but my current actions are actually taking me over here, there's a misalignment there. And it can be easy in the moment to see that, but when you're always on the go, or you're always stimulated by something else, or you're always in someone else's story or watching Netflix, you're never practicing connecting with yourself. And then it shouldn't be so weird that when you're out in the world that you can easily get thrown off. So doing the somatic work, and again, I implore you to Google it, because I don't really know enough about it yet. I'm still learning. But it just makes so much more sense to me now that the body is just as important, because you can't sit here and think your entire life away. You can't think yourself to a solution that, again, it's because you want control, but you can't. You need to allow your body to be a part of it. And you need, especially as a woman, you need to be able to listen to your intuition, which is coming from your body, giving you these nudges. And I just genuinely believe that there is an easier way, that there is a more authentic way for each of us as individuals that we can follow. Your body will tell you what you need in the moment, but you're never stopping to actually listen. All right, well, number 3 is a pretty self-explanatory one and a pretty basic one, but gratitude, which sometimes when I talk about gratitude to myself or I hear it from someone else, I just want to say, shut the fuck up. Like, you don't know what I've been through. I'm sick and tired of hearing about what I need to be grateful for, or because someone else is going through worse, I need to XYZ. I just want to say, shut up and piss off. So I get it if that sounds annoying. But with that said, bringing it back to something that you're grateful for can really shift your perspective, your mindset, your emotions, and your energy. And again, we're always wanting to bring it back to shifting your energy, because we do believe that we're perpetuating it. If we keep taking on the negativity, that's what we're putting out, and then we're creating a loop, correct? So I don't really have one routine that I do this by. It's more of like an overall rule. So I don't write down 5 things I'm grateful for every morning. I don't really feel the need to do it. I, if anything, have learned one thing that shifts things for me is not only when I'm feeling negative do I switch it to something positive and say I'm thankful for whatever it is. I really, really, really dedicate to saying thank you and that I'm grateful to the universe way more often now. And I do it in the more simple ways. Whenever something makes me feel good or happy or a sense of joy, and again, simple things, it can be simple things. It can be the really great workout I had with a new friend yesterday. It can be the delicious dinner I made. It can be something that I learned. So really, I'm also grateful to myself, but it's just the experience of doing it. It can be seriously one of the things that have brought me so much joy. Have been seeing you guys' comments on my video since I started only a couple of weeks ago. Seeing someone showing gratitude to me because of something that I'm giving to you that I feel so called to. You have no idea how much that shifts my day, because it gives me so much more desire to keep going with it, because I really feel like I got to a point, especially with this podcast, where I was like, the next step on my healing journey is to not just sit with all of this myself, but to use it for something good. And because I believe that talking about it and learning and teaching about it is also a way for me to learn more and for me to get to the next level in my healing journey. So really writing down, journaling, whatever it is that makes you feel good, a way for you to say thank you, even showing more gratitude authentically to more people in your life. Really notice how many times we put up these facades and we wear these masks where we all say, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? Also fine. And then you move on with the day. Or where we just quickly say thank you when we get something, or we have to do something for someone else and we're like, well, whatever. Really try to take more time to authentically give people gratitude, because you can tell the way that it shifts them and their energy when you really genuinely say thank you so much, or when you say I really appreciate that, or that was amazing, you did that so well, or when you authentically give someone a compliment and really lean into it instead of backing away or doing it half-ass or hastily, because it can feel awkward, right? And I know for myself, when people give me compliments, I tend to just shy away from it. And once again, we keep circling back to that sense of connection and that sense of authenticity. And have you ever felt like you had a moment where you were more real, or you had a different experience that day than you normally do, and you go home and you're like, that just felt really good? Like connecting deeper with someone, or feeling like you were seen or heard in a new way, or in a deeper way, or in a more real way. It just made you feel more like yourself. So isn't that kind of the goal always? But also realizing that being yourself is always up to you, because it can be so easy to just give all control to your external factors. Well, I have to be this person at my job. I have to be this person here. My husband expects this and this and this from me, or my wife, or whatever it is. I need to be this person for my kids first and foremost. But who are you without all of those stories, limitations, and excuses? Because why do you feel the need to make an excuse for yourself to be better and feel better? That is really something for you to reflect on. Because at the end of the day, we make so many excuses for ourselves because we're afraid of change, even if we know that the change will ultimately make us happier. Right? All right, lastly, let's talk about the 3 principles. This actually comes from something that I'm learning from a Danish book, but apparently it also comes from these 3 principles. So let's talk about them as a more spiritual note to round out this episode and to really tie it all together. So essentially, we have 3 principles. One is mind, one is consciousness, and one is thought. It can be defined as the way that we see life, the way that we experience life, and the way that we perceive it. And let me just read what it says about this. Together, these 3 components are the golden threads from which all human experience is woven. No one can exist without them. They are the necessary components through which we acknowledge life. Without any of these 3 principles, life would not exist for any human being. They are the psychological trinity of all human functioning. So isn't it interesting how many times we feel like we have so many subjective experiences and so many things where we feel like no one can understand me, when really so many of us go through the exact same things and we're wired in the same way in so many ways. And that's also another thing. Stop hammering down on yourself so much, because you're literally just being a human being. Doesn't mean you don't need to take responsibility, and I hope that you get better at this, but maybe it's time to stop looking at it as if it's something wrong or bad, because to me that just feels like it's more resistance for me to be able to break through and change it. And understanding these principles more, you start to have a new way to experience happiness and life in general. You have a new way to start experiencing happiness and your well-being and your mental well-being, because you start to see life in a certain specific way. And with these principles, it ties back to what I talked about before, that it can seem like the most natural thing for us because of the way that we've grown up, because of the way we've been taught things, that whenever we feel certain feelings, we identify with them. When we're feeling anxious and stressed, we say, I'm a stressed person. I am stressed. I have stress. I am anxious. I always get anxious. Of course you do, because that's the story you're telling yourself. And of course you then have to stay stuck in that. But with that, it seems logical to our brains to find a reason for it. So we will then start blaming these external factors. Like I said, it's a crowded train. People are always negative. So those are the things that are always going to happen to me. And of course, that is just going to be multiplied when the bigger bad things happen in life, when we go through breakups, grief, losing a loved one. Coming back to, once again, we get put into these emotional states where we feel like we have lost control of our lives. So what do? We do the thing called, how do I cope? How do I make myself feel better about this? Which again can turn into feeling worse about ourselves. And for me, it was drinking wine or emotionally eating, not eating to control my body. Or it can be what I was supposed to do later, which I'll do tomorrow, talking to a spiritual counselor. Not because I'm in a negative space, but because it's become something that is me doing the work and investing in myself. Now, the lesson on this that I just love is none of these external factors in our lives can actually, and are you listening to me right now? None of the external factors in your life are actually making you feel anything. Now, I am still reading this book. I have not actually read the full book yet, but I really wanted to talk about this. So I went to this site to learn more about it, to kind of figure out if I'm on the right track with it. And it seems that I am. So I will be using parts of that so that I'm not just talking out of my behind. So it's going back to the mind. You're thinking because of your own story and patterns and habits in your life, because of the way you see life and you see yourself, you are now creating a story and a thought in your head. You're giving meaning, which is creating emotion for you personally. Let's say a screaming man comes into the train. One person can think, holy crap, that's annoying. They've seen this their entire lives, and it's always just been kind of like a nuisance. And they're also quite good at dealing with annoying situations, but it still annoys them. Then the other person can have literal trauma in their life that they remember because of one of their parents used to be an abusive alcoholic who used to create so much chaos in their lives, which created so much fear for them, especially as a child. Seeing a person like that coming in can just trigger something in them right away, right? That person, though, coming into the train hasn't actually created anything within you. It's your story creating what he's about to do or who he is. That's why you don't need to identify with all of these things, because it is not who you are. It's a passing thought. The emotion that you're having is because of the thought that you're creating because of something you're seeing. And again, that is just called being a human being. But it really makes such a profound shift and difference when you look at it like that. And isn't it interesting that technically your mind is thinking an anxious thought? It's creating an anxious story in your life, which becomes the emotion. Going back to somatic work, being able to connect, because otherwise your body and your mind is going to do it anyways. So you might as well learn to connect with it, because otherwise you're just going to keep going through life, allowing yourself to be triggered and reactive all the time. And one thing I have really started to think heavily about is how often I say something like, oh no, and then fill out the blank. I'm always late. I mean, I'm not, but let's say that's what I said. I'm always late. Or like, no, because I hate public speaking. I can't do that. I always blush so much. I always get too nervous and then I run off. No, I'm just not really that kind of a person. How often do you say certain things, but you're really just perpetuating a story that you created for yourself based on an experience you had, which made you think a thought, which created a feeling. And now that feeling has become a loop of feelings. And then when you know something is going to happen again, which in the past created a certain feeling, you're already creating the anxiety for the next time it happens because you remember the previous time it happened. But what you could do is say, I'm going to use this energy because if it can use to make me feel bad, it can be used to make me feel good. So from now on, let's start visualizing the day. Let's start creating positive momentum. And that's why I also want to start doing Joe Dispenza's meditations, because let's actively use our mind, our feelings, and our thoughts to create. Because what you can do is create an absolutely new identity, a new story. When I was bigger, when I was heavier, I needed to start creating a person in my mind who was on the journey of losing weight successfully, of someone who's going to show up and do the work. I couldn't shame or hate myself the way there. I just simply couldn't because I tried. I needed to get to the point where I realized it's because I want to be a certain person, and that needs to align with a certain identity, which obviously means certain actions. And if I keep doing the same thing, I'm just living in the same loop where I tell myself the same story, which makes me feel bad, which, oh, guess what? It makes me eat. And it's not easy. It is not easy. It is repetitive action of showing up again and again and again, doing the uncomfortable thing because you're teaching your brain to tell a new story, which creates new feelings in your body, which creates the new identity. Last thing I read on this 3 principles subject was that our natural state is calm, clarity, and contentment. That is actually our natural state. And then when you're feeling all of these things, it's because you're creating the thoughts. Let's make this homework actually. I want for you to go out into the world living as you probably have to, doing it as you normally would, but be super freaking intentional. Be super freaking intentional and be really, really, really mindful with your self-talk. I want you to look at the world as someone who's objectively going out there. It's not possible to do it fully because you are a human being and you're at work, you're at school, wherever you are. But I want you to practice being mindful of what thoughts are in my head right now? How am I feeling in my body? Take some deep breaths and realize that your body is actually signaling something to you right now. Whenever you feel slightly triggered if someone says something to you or for whatever reason it is, start to talk to yourself. And when you start to realize that the only reason why you're feeling that certain way is because you're already talking to yourself, it's just become so natural that you're not realizing it at this point. And that goes back to me saying, we need to change the self-talk, because as silly as it can feel, you need to really, really be realistic and understand that you're out there creating a life that might be limiting you in so many ways because of these thoughts that you're having. And when you keep having certain thoughts, you're going to have certain expectations, and the universe has no other options than to give you what you're expecting. So if you're expecting the same and these negative things, guess what? That's just what you're going to continue getting. And realizing all of this really helps you to not be so caught up in your head, because you realize it's kind of like a little bit of a game. You start to be able to play with it a little bit because you realize, wow, this doesn't mean that this is just who I am. This doesn't mean I'm a victim to these things happening to me. I'm kind of being a drama queen in my own head right now. I'm telling you, the awareness is step 1, and then starting to talk to yourself differently is step 2. And then the whole detachment game comes in, where you have to learn to regulate in the moments. And it's a repetitive cycle, but it's going to help you so much in the long run. And that's like, life is a long run game, hopefully. So stop getting caught up in the quick fixes, because the reason why you want the quick fixes is because you're so used to them. Your normal coping mechanisms have been quick fixes. It has been scrolling, it has been alcohol, food, sex, whatever it is. You're so used to it, so that's why you want it. It feels tedious to say, I need to do a lot of this work and this inner work on myself, and I need to show up to it in these ways. That sounds too hard. And it is hard, and it's supposed to be hard, because you would have changed by now if it wasn't hard. But just because something is hard does not make it not worth it. Do you think I feel like changing my body and my health was worth it, even though it was so hard? Abso-fucking-lutely. And that's why I'm doing it this time. That's why I'm changing, because I want change in my life more than I want my unhappy life before. And I'm not saying that I was at a rock bottom or that I was miserable, but I was on the path. I was on a path where I was spiritual but unhappy. It was like I had two lives, and I don't want to live that life anymore. Because I need to understand that I'm choosing it for myself. Every time I feel like I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough, whatever it is, I start to settle and I start to feel like a victim, and then that becomes coping. And we're not doing that crap anymore. So, lastly, if your police gonna do that and really even come back to me and tell me the epiphanies that you've had during this, while you're doing this and while you're out there doing it, okay? Then also really try to do the gratitude work I told you about. Again, maybe you want to do it in a different way. But for me, giving thanks for the little things in life and being more authentic and present with people is starting. I was going to say has made, but it's starting to make a shift in my life, because I feel like I'm just starting to become brave enough to break through the resistance of this is awkward, or feeling like, why should I? Because I have an internal dialogue saying, I'm actually not grateful for it because all of these negative things that I could be unhappy about. I'm learning how to change that talk that I have with myself and with the universe, and showing real gratitude. And when you know you're doing it right, because it creates an instant new story. Because why? Because you can feel the emotion in your body if you just allow yourself to connect to it. When you're really present in giving this gratitude, you will feel the shift in your body. It becomes like little butterflies. And it feels so amazing. And that's when you know you're on the right path of this work. And of course, go to the description or the comments. I will definitely link some good stuff when it comes to EFT, breathwork, meditations, and also come with me to my Instagram and my TikTok. Let's really build a community of like-minded people. And yeah, I think maybe I've rambled for too long at this point, but these things they're very important in my life. And it's really making such profound shifts for me, even though it's not easy. It's really changing my life. So I really feel like it's important for me to share that, because otherwise it's too easy to just return to what's the old and what's the known. If I've seen anything in my life so far, it's when I push through and I decide that I want what I want when it comes to positive change, I've seen how the universe also shows up for me in return. So amazing. And with all of this said and all of these tools and all these great things, please do keep in mind, like I always say, especially on the spiritual path, we're still human beings. So remember, you are healing to live, not living to heal. And I love you guys. And I hope you have an absolutely amazing day, night, week. And for you who's watching this, who had a bad day, please trust that you're seeing this for a reason. And for that person who has a really big meeting they want to hype up for, go do some EFT, go do some breath work, go do a meditation right before, because you already know you have totally got this. And you really need to believe that, because the rest of us believe in you. So, all right, you guys, I will see you guys in next week's podcast or in tomorrow's YouTube video. Okay, bye guys.